Hi everyone! So today I want to share this little painting with you. It's very modern, very kind of somewhere between tribal and geometrical, I suppose. But it's super easy to do, and I think it looks more impressive than actually compared to how easy it is to make. So Mason is with us today, but he promised to play. So for this purpose, I'm going to use this paper, which actually I'm quite surprised how good this type of illustration works on it. I don't like how sort of watercolors generally behave on it, but for this purpose it seems to work really well. It's also a very wide sort of colored paper, and I love foremost the texture of it because you can see how the watercolor settles into it and it looks very pretty. So if you're interested, this is a super cheap, I think it was about £4, and you can buy it in a shop called Tiger. I don't know if they do online. I will look on Amazon. I doubt that you can buy it on Amazon, but I'll have a look. If it is, then I'll put the link down below in the description. So it's called the Aquarelle Block. Very affordable and great paper. You get 20 sheets and 300 GSM. I already used quite a few. In my previous videos I used this paper for my TN inserts, and they work perfectly for a B6 size. I just literally bend it right in half, and that was a B6. But anyways, that's off subject. Okay, so here is what you need for this painting. I'm going to use a grey watercolor, and the one I like to use for this is the Payne's Grey from St. Petersburg White Night. So this is this color right here. You have this color in many different brands, and so you know, I'm sure you'll find it in your palette or one of your palettes. And then for this beautiful metallic effect, I'm going to use the bronze from the Finetec palette. So it's a very pretty color. I really like how it works together with the Payne's Grey. So let's start. So I'm going to use my Jackson's Quill brush in 10-0, and the purpose of that is because it holds a lot of water, and I quite like that. So I'm going to start by just wetting the paper foremost. So I'm going to do a strip at a time because otherwise the water will dry out. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to draw a line, nice and simple. I'm just making sure you can see all of it. You can make them thick, you can make them thin, it is up to you, but I personally like them when they have a mix to them. Now once I have settled the water, I'm making sure to look at an angle to see whether it's still glistening. So while it's still glistening, I'm going to go into my palette and get this lovely Payne's Grey. It needs to be fairly concentrated for this purpose because you have water here. And now I'm just going to start touching it like so. And going all the way down, and then load your brush with the pigment again as you approach the bottom because it will start getting weaker. And that is it. So at the moment it looks like a line, but it will spread a little bit more and it will become a bit thicker. So let's move on to the second one. I'm washing my brush out, making sure I'm going to have nice clean water, and for that purpose I'm going to lay my brush on the side and drag a nice thick line. Now this isn't a very straight line as you can see, but I can correct it because the water dries. And so you can start again. So if you made a shape which you think is not looking great or is not straight, wait a little bit for it to dry. I'm going to show you when it is glistening right there. So this is a good time before it starts drying out to go in with the watercolor, because you want the watercolor to move. So when it's a little bit wider like this, I'm going to make these quick movements, making sure the water is still nice and wet. And that is it. I'm not going to the edge because I want the color, the watercolor, the pigment, to be drawn to the edge, and that's what's going to make it nice and interesting. I'll show you on the finished look. So right here, you don't have a straight line, but you have a nice kind of effect on here, like a blurry effect. And then there is a straight line here, just to show you what it would look like without it. So next one, I have to watch it and get it to the right dryness, but before it dries completely. So the first line is ready now. If I'm going to tilt it, you can see the middle of it is not glistening anymore, but it is still wet. So that's the right time to then go in and create these lovely blooms. Okay, so now my card got full, and so I had to stop to put a different card in. So the water has now dried a bit more on this other strip of the color, so I'm just going in now and trying and hoping that I still will get the blooms, and it looks like I will. So now I'm going to do just the thin line, and I'm going to show you what happens if you just go in with the watercolor. So I'm just mixing up my watercolor over there, and then I'm going to go in like so, and straight away, not letting it dry too much, I'm going to touch water and create that gradient look, and then I'm going to dip in watercolor again, but mostly on this side where it's nice and straight, and then the watercolor will just push to the wet side, and that will give us a variety of a straight and a blurred line. And then I'm going to create another line right next to, maybe even thinner, and I'm going to just really quickly go down and make sure it's not just going to stay like this, but that there is enough water to connect it. So I quite like this variety of thickness. And then finally I'm going to do another thick one. So the water is a little bit stained now, but it doesn't seem to pick up on the paper. It's a nice thick line, and working really quickly, having this watercolor ready. Make sure you don't mix up a too watery color, because what will happen, as you can see here, it's not as intense, and then it will be just a little bit too watery. So while this one is doing its job, I'm going to go to this middle line, which I didn't put any blooming effect, and I'm just going to dab in some clean water like so. So you can see how super quick this is. I think I won't put any blooming effect on this, just to have a variety. And then I'm going to go into my bronze watercolor and create a little bit of pizzazz. So where is it? It's over here. I'm just going to wake up the watercolor by dropping a few drops of water. So now it's nice and creamy, and I'm going to select a few places where I'm going to put it. So I want to add it here like so, just doing the same thing as before, just dabbing it on. And then I'm going to make sure you don't contaminate the watercolors by going in with your darker color into the gold or the metallics, because that obviously will tint them. Now I can't go into here anymore because I can see it's sort of dry already, so I'm just going to hope that I can still do it over here, which is also dry. So I'm going to show you what to do once the watercolors are dry. So when they're dry, what you can do is just wash your brush out and then go and dab in, sort of creating blooming effects again, and then the metallic will spread. I'm going to add it onto the last strip of color where it's still nice and wet, but this one is quite intense because we left it like that. And so, like, see, I just have done something that I told you not to do. So learn from my mistake. So now this one looks quite different because of the intensity of the watercolor that I laid on before. Okay, so here is the dried version. You might find that when the watercolors are still wet, it doesn't look as impressive, just because it sort of comes through to life once you really dry the watercolor, and you can let it dry naturally or use your heat gun. So this is what they look like, and quite nice. You can do different, like I said, different thicknesses. You can do blurred and non-blurred lines. You can just leave the watercolor by itself. I'm actually going to frame these pieces because I have a collage of frames on my wall, and after many considerations I decided to go with this type of colors and just do different shapes. So I might do some geometrical triangles and whatnot. I'll have a think, but I'll basically, probably the majority of the frames will have this type of watercolor illustration in them. So I hope you had fun. You can, you know, practice and create something like that for your either journals, or if you want to get them framed as well, why not? So here I'm giving you a little close-up of these beautiful watercolor blooms, and it just looks a lot more complicated than it actually is. So thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye bye.